recognize the dimensionality of the movement of breath. The body of breath comes in to your awareness, sensory awareness. And this is when you're starting to orient to the back. Bring your presence there so that the breath enters into the back. You have your inhalation immediately going there because you're there, and an exhalation, you swing back. For a while you're exploring the whole background. An inhale, and the exhale brings you back. And it always starts with the sensation of the breath movement in the back. With the impulse and inhalation, you sense how the inhale opens your back, and then the steps happen. In the transition from inhale to exhale, you stop and change the direction and move forward.
my breath dance, which was, and I didn't know this was going to happen as I was practicing. And as I was beginning to really connect with my breath in a deep inner way inside, I was able all of a sudden to come out with it in a way that I was very aware of the audience, and I was aware of my own intimacy with myself, and that I actually could connect that intimacy with the audience, and whoever was in the audience who wanted to be touched by this could touch themselves and have that intimacy in themselves. And there were a few people that happened with, and it was so beautiful for me.
It's really interesting to hear you speak about it that way, because it reminds me very clearly of what I think a lot of trainers of actors and performers are trying to invite, which is that you're in dialogue with yourself, with the audience, with the other people, and you're also in dialogue with earth and sky. I mean, you know, there's a sense, there's always a larger conversation that's kind of going on many different levels. Is that, it seems to me, that's what I think of when you explain that experience. Yeah.
And it was something, it was like a dream I've had all my life, to be able to really show myself in that way. And I didn't know that it was going to be then.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I just loved it.
Did you, what was it also about the feeling that you loved? Or can you speak more about?
Yes, the feeling of really connecting with myself at such a deep level and being guided by a power that was much greater than I, and being able to touch someone else or the other people in the audience and have them respond. Some of them responded with, "Wow, I'm touched," or "What is going on?"
Something,
or
I feel different.
Something, or at one point I felt like I could hear a pin drop, and there was a big hush, and there was something about life at its essence that just touched me.
Your awareness seems to have been, was at many different levels.
Yeah, it was.
And what's so interesting also is that the breath is actually the thing that was going on.
And there was actually something else going on, besides, which was part of my history. In back of me, to my left, was a sculpture that my mother had once owned. My mother was an artist. And I had no idea when I walked into that room, that gallery, that it or anything else would be there that would remind me anything of my mother. But what happened as a result, when she died, she left that to my brother. And it was an integration of my mother being an artist. I came from a family of artists, not all of them. It was quite the other. Quite not the artists, but also the artists were there. And that I've always wanted to be known as an artist. And I knew it myself that breath is my art, for me. And then to have it there and have my mother's presence be there, and she's been with me ever since.
That's an amazing story. Did you walk in the room and see it, or was it in the middle of what you were doing that you started to sense that was also in the room with you?
It was at the rehearsal, one of the rehearsals. The first time I said, "Oh no, I don't think I can do this."
This is going to be a totally different thing now.
But my emotions were totally at ease with the breath. And I just allowed something to happen that was arranged by forces beyond me.
There's something that I've heard in classes that I'm trying to understand more clearly, that it seems like you're touching on the idea of, and alter my language if I'm saying this wrong, the idea that the body can hold the feelings or the breath. Can you talk a little bit about
Oh,
that?
I'm so glad you asked.
Okay, because I'm fascinated by this, but I'm not quite sure I quite understand it.
Well, the way I understand it is that the emotions are looking for a body. I learned this from Jörg. And it's true, it's helped me so much in how I am with myself as well as when I teach other people. And the emotions, if they don't find a body, then they go spraying out all over the place. And I used to be a great emoter. In the 60s and 70s. I was a big sprayer everywhere. And so to have a container, and I feel that the body is a sacred container to hold the emotions along with the physical sensations of body and also the spirit and the psyche. And so when emotions come up, instead of spraying, they relate to my body through the sensation of the movement of breath. And the breath has a way of not only holding the emotions, but also supporting them so that they have a place to live. It's not squashing them down and it's not spraying them out. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense to me. It's a very different way of being with emotion,
Yeah.
I think. And I'm really fascinated with this, specifically in terms of working with actors who you're trying to get to connect to an authentic feeling, and yet that's usually when they engage their muscles and they want to either spray it out from their body or their bodies want to close down the voice so they don't experience. And I'm just fascinated with it because I think it's a very different way of approaching it. But to me, it seems true and possible for someone to actually experience the sensation of their feeling and survive it.
Exactly.
And not throw it on another person.
Yes.
So I'm really fascinated with that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Core, the center of the lower space, center in the pelvic floor, the knees, the center of the palm of the soles of the feet. And as you surrender an inhalation through all of these centers, through all of them, you're also opening the four doors: occiput, T10, T12, L5 sacrum, and knees, simultaneously in the beginning of inhale. You go through all of the centers as the doors are opening up on inhale. This is the first step. I'll let you be with this for a while. You have your feet planted on the floor. Don't walk. Remember also what we've done yesterday with the equal placement of the weight. There's no ambivalence in going down. But once you feel comfortable in going through the centers and all the doors are open, then you go to exhale, the beginning of exhale, and you experience the permission and allowance there, the yes that you offer to your exhale. You offer yourself to your exhale in the beginning. Say, take me, I'm with you. And then you let the exhale through. This is when it starts to become more free.
Breath comes and goes on its own, and with a peaceful rest, we trust that the next breath cycle emerges again on its own. The simplicity of this statement is full of richness and wisdom. It is one of nature's basic principles that we can experience in ourselves and learn about in all living creatures. If you are interested in breath, sooner or later you will connect with Ilse Middendorf and her work. Over the past 60 years, Ilse Middendorf has developed the experience of breath, which she began practicing in 1935. She was searching for the essence of a person's self through breath. After many years of research and practice, she founded the Institute for the Experience of Breath in Berlin to train practitioners in her form of breath education. Since its inception, her work has achieved international attention for its effectiveness in bringing balance and healing to the physical, emotional, and spiritual being through breath, the healthy, life-giving force. The experience of breath is based on the function of the unconscious breath. Could you say some more about the different forms of breath?
Mehr darüber sagen, was gibt es für verschiedene Formen von Atem eigentlich und weshalb?
There is the unconscious breath, or you can breathe with your will, or I found another form of being with the breath, which I call the experience of breath.
Eine neue Form, mit dem Atem umzugehen, und das nannte ich den erfahrbaren Atem, weil
We
wir
let the breath come on its own. At the same time, we have sensation. We are present. And we have the experience of sensation of breath movement, which processes through our whole body. This is our goal, to have this breath movement throughout our bodies. The breath movement makes the whole body permeable. You can imagine that as a logical consequence, as we process with the breath in this way, we become aware of our illnesses and difficulties. However, at the same time, we also realize that continuing with this process, the breath brings us a sense of well-being and balance, and we gain knowledge of our body.
in uns, wenn wir an der Arbeit sind.
Breathing is part of the autonomic nervous system and accompanies every act of the body. We may think that we're fully breathing all the time, but actually, if we have worries, fears, struggles, either of an internal or external nature, our muscles become tight and inflexible and disturb the normal function of our organs and joints, causing cramping and tension and eventually illness. However, we can reverse this process by learning about our breath in focusing, becoming sensory aware, and experiencing our natural breath movement. Through processing with breath, pain, conflict, or illness can be transformed, absorbed, and integrated as one part of our whole, and we find that breath can become our teacher within.
Bewegungen aus dem Atem sind das Eigentliche des erfahrbaren
Movements out of breath are the essence of the experience of breath. Breath movement is a primal movement, growing wide and swinging back, the primal movement of life. We listen to this primal movement of the breath, and then we embody it through sensing and being present with it. As a consequence, there are movements that are created which have specific meaning and come out of our own essence of self. Whenever I work with the experience of breath, I am addressing myself as a whole person in my spiritual, emotional, and physical being. And this shows in the movement out of breath. The experience of breath encompasses body, soul, and spirit. And the movement, then, is the language of this Trinity.
Mich anspreche. Das heißt also leiblich, seelisch und geistig. Und das ist dann der Ausdruck meiner Bewegungen, wenn ich mich so einlasse in mich selbst. Der erfahrbare Atem umfasst ja Leib, Seele, Geist, und die Bewegungen sind die Sprache dieser drei Tiefen.
Über das, was wir sind.
We talk a lot about who we truly are and how we can grow. How do you see this in terms of breath?
Der Atem ist eine elementare Kraft in uns.
Breath is a fundamental force within ourselves. The experience of breath is based on our ability to sense. When we develop our ability for sensation, to be present and to sense, then we have, through presence and sensation, access to the soul. So when I sense my breath movement, that means I grow wide and swing back with the breath. This creates a sense of well-being, which is transmitted to the soul. The soul transmits it further to the spiritual. That means that whenever we are working with breath, soul and spirit are always included. Every breath cycle participates in the whole. This is actually a goal for us, that we become one.
So it is breath movement that is the key element for the whole work.
Yes.
That is wonderful. I would like to go back to the state of being breath aware that you talked about earlier. In our society, people usually know very little about this state of being. What help would you offer people to achieve this state of being?
There are many things we could mention out of this whole work. For example, we want to get to know the lower space, the middle, and the upper space, and how to differentiate between them. It doesn't involve controlled breathing. Experiencing breath movement, growing wide with inhalation and swinging back with exhalation to the original position, the lower space is created. This principle applies for all three spaces, the lower, the middle, and the upper. And since we're experiencing these spaces as one in body, mind, and spirit, each space also has a meaning. The lower spaces are vitality. The middle space is our self, what I am. The upper space, then, is the unfolding of all of this. And when someone has matured on this path, it will show in the back of the neck and at the base of the skull.
Du weißt selber, wenn einer so in den Raum kommt, das ist anders, als wenn so kommt.
Ilse, I would like to ask you a personal question. What is your mission? How do you see the future of the breath?
Wie siehst du den Atem und die Menschen in der Zukunft?
Im Augenblick ist es ja so, ich habe manchmal den Eindruck, wir sind so wirklich mit die Ersten einer neuen Zeit.
I sometimes feel we are the first of a new age, and I hope very much that this new age can be developed and can come through now. It sounds utopian, but I see this happening now, and for the next 2,000 years.
Eine Handvoll, die mit dem Atem leben, die den Atem so als Zustand in sich haben.
Now we are a few, maybe a handful of people who are living with the breath. They carry the breath as a state of being within themselves. You can sense through the breath if something is out of balance. You can sense potential illnesses and disturbances, and you can do something about it. The experience of breath creates well-being. Also, thoughts and the meaning of life become different.
Wir werden große Verwandlungen haben. Und meine Vision wäre,
we will go through major transformation, and my vision is that people will live more in peace through the balance of the feminine and male principle. If we allow the masculine principle to continue to be dominant, and if the feminine principle continues to stay unconscious, I am pessimistic about the future. But if we allow the feminine principle to unfold into consciousness and become substantial and meaningful, and to stop imitating the masculine principle, then gradually a balance can happen between the two. And this will change life on Earth, not just individually, but for the whole culture.
Gewichtigkeit zwischen beiden, und das wird das ganze Leben auch für die Bevölkerungen ändern.
This will take time. Right now, people seem to be scared to look at themselves and take responsibility. As soon as they realize they are responsible, they usually back off. With this vision, there is a lot to do, and we need to be very patient.
Verantwortung, da geht's meistens ein bisschen wieder zurück oder sie arbeiten nicht weiter. Also da ist unendlich viel zu tun.
Ja, das
Wir müssen sehr viel Geduld haben.
Ja, ja.